Hi, and welcome to lesson 1 of the 28-day Embodied Confidence Bootcamp. This lesson is called The Science of Becoming. In this video, you will learn what is embodied confidence. You will learn the embodied confidence approach, so the basic model that we'll be using over the next 28 days. And you will learn the neuroscience behind why we use practice. This is a practical-based program, and so you'll learn why we use practice, why that's so important. So starting with the definition of embodied confidence, I'll break the term into two. What is embodied confidence anyways? So something is embodied. I like the definition of embodied that comes from the Strozzi Institute, a school of somatic coaching based in the United States. And what they say is that something is embodied when it happens automatically, even under stress and pressure. So a classic example is the one of driving a car, learning to drive a car. So there was a period in your life when you learned to drive a car, when you really had to pay attention to what you were doing. So you were in the car with your driving instructor, your mom or your dad, and you really had to pay attention to where are your hands? Are they at 10 and 2? Where is your right foot? Where is the gas pedal? Where is the brake pedal? And eventually, over time, with practice and repetition, learning to drive the car became embodied. It's now something that you barely even have to think about, sometimes to the detriment of other drivers on the road. You just get in the car, you end up at the grocery store, and you're not even sure how you got there. And you're able to drive with your kids yelling in the back, the radio on, a lot of traffic. You're able to drive the car relatively easily, even under stress and pressure. For the term confidence, I like to take the definition from the book, The Confidence Code. They say confidence is the belief in self that translates into an ability to act. So I've edited this definition slightly. I've added in an alignment with what you care about. So confidence is belief in self that translates into an ability to act in alignment with what you care about. Because if you're not acting in alignment with what you care about, then there's not much point in doing any of this. So when you put those two terms together, embodied confidence, what you get is an ability to act in confidence, in alignment with what you care about, an ability to believe in yourself and act in alignment with what you care about, even under times of stress and pressure. And so a lot of times I talk to women and they're able to believe in themselves and to act confidently in low pressure situations, so that when they're at home feeling comfortable with family members that they get along with, or if they're at work in a relatively low pressure situation, but suddenly when the stakes are ratcheted up, if it's something that they really care about, if it's something where there's a lot of stress and pressure involved, some external demands, then they lose that ability to believe in self, and they lose that ability to follow through. So this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to train that ability to believe in self and follow through, even under times of stress and pressure. This is the basic model that we're working with. So in some way, you have embodied doubt. And we're going to spend some time getting curious as to how you have embodied doubt. And some way you've embodied doubt, we're going to do a bunch of confidence practices in the middle. So this will be like driving the car when you were a teenager. You'll have to think about it. You'll have to pay attention to what you're doing. It's going to feel a little bit awkward at first. You're not going to be used to it. Eventually, over time, with practice and repetition, confidence will become embodied. It will become something that happens more easily. It'll become something that happens automatically, something that you don't have to think about. So why do we rely on practice? Why is practice so important in this model? Essentially, you are what you practice. You're always practicing something, and usually what you are practicing lies outside of your conscious awareness, and it's happening automatically. Who you are today is a direct reflection of what you have been practicing up to this point. If we want to become something new, then we must practice something new. To really understand why practice is so important to the foundations of this program, then we need to get an understanding of how our brains and bodies work. We need to understand the neuroscience behind how we adapt to our environment. So going right back to the beginning, at birth, you were born with billions of neurons in your brain, but limited connections between them. And the reason for that is because you were designed as a human to adapt to your local environment. So neuroscientists believe that this is the one thing that has helped humans survive when other similar species have not survived. It's our ability to adapt to our environment. The fact that we were born with billions of neurons in our brain, but limited connections between them, allows us to adapt to our environment in a way that secures our survival. And so what are we adapting to? Largely and very simply, we are adapting to our environment in a way that will help us avoid pain and seek pleasure. These are the two things that help us survive. So very early on, we learn things such as fire equals hot equals avoid, and sugar equals pleasure equals approach. And so to give a really concrete example of this, I'm thinking of my daughter when she was around age 2 or 3. We were on a road trip. We needed to gas up, so we pulled over the side of the road. I stopped into the local coffee shop there. I went to get coffee for my husband and I picked my daughter up and I put her on the counter of the coffee shop. And I turned away for a minute, and very quickly she put her hand on the burner of the coffee element. And so in that moment, her fingers bubbled up. I can still see them today. And she learned very quickly not to touch hot things. And I learned very quickly not to put my young children on the counters of coffee shops. This information became hardwired into our brain. So now when she enters a room, she doesn't have to consciously think, I'm not going to touch the fire. She just adapts to her environment automatically based on her previous learning. So survival-based information, which is information that tells us what will bring us pleasure and what will help us avoid pain. Survival-based information is information that helps keep us safe. That gets hardwired into the brain. Once something is hardwired, we don't have to think about it. We just automatically and unconsciously perceive our environment, make predictions based on our past experiences, and respond to our environment. This process, this ability to do things without occupying the mind with low-level details required to keep us safe, is called automaticity. So it's our ability to automatically respond to things happening in our environment. And our automaticity can either work for us or against us. So if we refer back to our model for a moment, that idea of embodied doubt and how automatically and unconsciously we are acting in ways that might be doubt-based, then our automaticity is working against us. But with practice, with awareness, with consciousness, with repetition, then we can practice something new and have our automaticity work for us. So why am I telling you all this? What does fire being hot have to do with confidence? Well, it turns out that the same mechanics at play in keeping us physically safe are also involved in keeping us socially safe. So in our brains, we process social threat and physical threat in the exact same way. The same parts of our brain actually light up when we face a social threat and when we face a physical threat. Why is that? Well, if we think of how we have evolved, if we think of our time back on the Serengeti, then social threat, being banished from the herd, was actually a survival threat. We needed the safety of the herd in order to secure food, secure water, and defend ourselves against threat, defend ourselves against tigers, defend ourselves against the climate. And so banishment from the herd was actually a survival threat. So we are very wired today from an evolutionary point of view to be scanning our environment for social threats, to be scanning our environment for things that can get us socially ostracized or banished from the herd, and we are motivated to comply with the social constraints, the social expectations of our group. So this is going to come into play a little bit later, but it's just something to know for now. So to sum up, your embodiment matters. Your current embodiment has secured your physical and social survival, your physical and social safety. The way to shift your embodiment is through practice. Practice got you where you are today. We're always practicing something, and by bringing awareness to what we are practicing, we can shift our practices and we can become something new.